Hey everyone. So we wanted to jump in on a very important subject, Ani Lipitz and I, on a subject which is the Mechias Amalek, the getting rid of Amalek, as a preparation for entering the most auspicious day on the entire calendar, and that is Purim. So for us to enter Purim, which is essentially a messianic, it says that in the days of Mashiach, Purim is still going to shine. We are going to have the Geula of Purim, which is the whole nafochu, seeing that everything in nature is not the way that we think it is, that God is working within nature, and everything is supernatural, including nature. Nature itself is supernatural, and we take off the mask of Esther to reveal the Hester that really everything is Elokus, everything is godliness. Anyways, we've got something kind of in the way, and kind of big in the way, and that is our perception of seeing that. And that's why the mitzvah before entering Purim, before going into Purim, we have the mitzvah, which is midaraisa from the Torah, to hear the Mechias Amalek, the destruction of Amalek as read in the Torah this past Shabbos. So Zachor and reading about Zachor is not just getting rid of it just by hearing it. It takes a lot of inner work and deep work to understand, to identify essentially what Amalek is, what it means, because Amalek, our masters tell us, it is the same gematria as safek, as doubt. And it is so fine, and it knows exactly what to do, this nation of Amalek. And so we've got basically a couple of minutes to delve into Amalek together. And it is probably a discussion that can and will go on for many more ideas to follow and whatnot, in sessions that and offshoots and tangents that we could get on. So I'd love to jump into this subject of Amalek. I know that Ani, we spoke about Amalek in the form of narcissism, and that's something that both of us have experience with narcissistic individuals in our lives. And you felt like we had this conversation that narcissism is Amalek. So what do you mean by that? And
sure.
yes.
So first to kind of clarify terms, is the term narcissism is thrown around a lot these days, and people, someone who's selfish, self-centered. We're talking in this conversation about those individuals who are probably also would be categorized as maybe having sociopathy, people who are like clinical narcissists, essentially. And we have to also first say that we know that there's help for every soul, no matter what matzav it's in, but how we're going to choose to navigate relationships and situations here on, an actual lived level. We have to have a skill set to deal with all different ways that people's expressed personalities are manifesting, that their souls are covered up essentially by these different spiritual forces. So we're talking here not about people who are like, oh, I'm the best in the world, but like serious narcissism, narcissistic abuse, essentially, what we're speaking about here. So one of the characteristics of the spiritual force of Amalek, because in our days there's not one literal geographical nation that's Amalek, it's a spiritual force. It's a spiritual energy. It always has been. But one of the main ways that Amalek is defined is having this quality of a zeus, which is very often translated as chutzpah, but not chutzpah the way we think of it, of like, oh, back talk, whatever, like this extremely dark sense of irreverence. So I guess we could kind of translate chutzpah kind of as irreverence. And how does this show up? The quality of Amalek is that it essentially tries to put itself in the God space inside a person. it chokes off a person's sense of God, a person's sense of their deepest self, of their deepest purpose. It attacks the neck. It says, it severs the head from the body. It chokes off a person's sense of amuna. And our amuna is actually it's translated as faith, but what it really is our ability to sense higher and deeper realities before we're able to internalize them. So Amalek comes and chokes off our sense of deeper reality and puts itself in the God space, essentially. And we see that this is exactly what narcissistic abusers do as well. And the ultimate form of chutzpah is really gaslighting. And this is exactly what Amalek did to the Jewish people in the desert. They came after the revelation of the Torah, after God himself was like face to face with the Jewish people. And Amalek came, and it says they cooled them off. They came and they were like, that wasn't what you thought it was. That's not what that was. Like, what are you guys on such a high for? Like, I'm sorry. They gaslighted us out of our experience of Matan Torah, essentially, and warped the whole sense of reality. And this is precisely what we see with narcissistic abuse. Is part of that calling card is gaslighting. And there's no bigger chutzpah than coming to a person and being like, nah, I didn't do what you think I did. You're not who you think you are. Cooling down a person's soul, the fire that we have, for passion that we have, and totally, putting out that flame and that sense of who I really am, disconnecting me from my true self in order to, essentially put yourself in the God space.
Wow. There's so many ways to get into that idea and to really unpack it. I feel like in Hasidus, like we have to really go into the source. And I was giving a class on the tree of life, on the origin of the tree of life, and how essentially there was a possibility for man to sin and for this cosmic fall of humanity to happen. How did it happen? Like, what was there? They were in paradise. They had everything there. They had all the reality, like of seeing godliness. What was it? So Hasidus explains to us that there was a possibility of Rav, good and bad, that was implanted within creation at the beginning. And Adam essentially had a choice. And the choice was, is he going to pay attention to that and internalize that as being him, thereby identifying with that question of, is it God or is it not? Is it or is it not? That doubt, is God really fully in the picture or maybe not? That's Amalek. And that's what the Talmud tells us, Haman. Where do we find Haman from? Haman, the Talmud says, Hamina Eitzah, from this tree. The origin of Haman, the origin of Haman is Amalek, coming from the tree, from that place of doubt, of saying, maybe it's not all God, maybe there is perhaps that. And that is the source of Rashis Goyim Amalek. That's the beginning of all of the negativity. All negativity really starts from there, from that point of self-doubt. And it also ends there. Rashid Goyim, and it says Achrito, it's also the end. It's like it's completely enveloping, which when we talk about this on a real level, on an experiential level, from us as humans and interactions that we have, I agree, not every person is a narcissist for sure. But once you find out what is a narcissist really, you realize I shouldn't even doubt the fact that I'm doubting that this person is a narcissist, because that is narcissism at its peak, like instilling the doubt. But when you do find out, then it's just so almost like, oh, well then, who am I? Like, what what has been done to me, basically.
Right, right. And that's actually the medicine essentially for the poison of Amalek, or the effect that, somebody who is under the influence of the Amalek klipa, what they're broadcasting into the world is the gift in that, the gift in the healing process from narcissistic abuse, or for the effect of Amalek on a person, is that you have to go to your essence to heal from that. You have to get past your emotional and intellectual perception of reality, which has been warped by the experience of Amalek, essentially. And you have to go higher into your essence and tap that essence in order to heal. And because Amalek is essentially, it's the father of all klipa, it is the deepest darkness. You have to go to the deepest essence within that darkness in order to heal. And I know in my own journey healing from narcissistic abuse, it was that and that alone that led me into my essence, that led me to finally tap that holy fire and burn from the inside out all of the effects that it had had on me. And I know personally, thank God, since I'm so largely on the other side of it, and, there's still struggles and things like that. But to be able to look back and say, if it hadn't been for that, I would have never gone so deep to tap into this essence and this fire. And so, in every situation that we're in, we want to look and say, like, what's the gift? What's the deeper purpose? And we see that narcissistic abuse is very prevalent in these days because A, the darkest klipa is coming up now to be rectified. Yeah. And B, because our avoda is to tap our essence and reveal our essence in this generation, because that's the full revelation of Geula. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for many of us, it is really through encountering this deepest darkness and deepest concealment that is put over our own self. We have to go so deep to heal from it that you come in contact with your own essence.
Yeah. And you make also a lot of people uncomfortable, and you kind of break the paradigm of, oh, everything is fine. We're all okay. It's all just a tapestry, because that's a lot of what, narcissistic families do. They make sure that everyone is playing the role of perfection, and that, nothing's wrong. Everything is fine. We're just as status quo. And you're absolutely right. Before Mashiach, it's like a lot of these kids of, children are basically not taking or unwilling anymore to take this hypocrisy, right? Which, although it's not narcissistic, but it has those certain tendencies in our society. And they are saying almost like enough to that. The Rebbe said by the hippie revolution, he said, finally, the ice is melting. Yeah. He saw this kind of like, okay, it's a collide. And before coming to Geula, we absolutely have to be dealing with this narcissistic tendency.
And breaking away from that, and not feeding it anymore, not feeding the klipa. We talk about, refusing to be narcissistic supply in the world of healing. That literally means I'm cutting off Yanika to the klipa. I'm not feeding that klipa anymore. Mm-hmm. And why do we have the power to do this now? Because, as the Rebbe announced, Geula is here, and the power of Mashiach is revealed in the world, and that's the highest power. And so when we tap into our own personal power of redemption, that's why at this point in history, the narcissism, the real dark Amalek, it's coming out of the woodwork, because we now have that corollary power of Mashiach revealed in us to be mishapech, to flip it.
Totally.
That's right out of reality.
That's totally what it is. It is flipping, because doubt is so, self-doubt is so subtle that unless you radically do the opposite of self-acceptance and love, which actually, when you get to the etymology of narcissism, most people don't know this. In Greek mythology, there was this person who looked inside of the river and saw his own reflection, and then he fell into that, and from there narcissism came out. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with looking at ourselves, with appreciating ourselves just the opposite, loving ourselves in a healthy way, in appreciating that, and appreciating our gifts, appreciating who we are, and loving ourselves in a healthy way. There's nothing wrong with that. But then there's that self immersive love that the person overly identifies, and it's not love anymore. It really comes from a sense of lack of really knowledge of who they are, and unhealing from previous.
And well, you see in that story, he became obsessed with a projection of himself, of an external image of himself. He was outside of himself, becoming obsessed with an image of himself. And this is exactly what a narcissist does. They're not capable of coming in contact with other people with true reality. They're projecting themselves onto everyone and everything, and then just interacting with that projection. And all of us do that to a certain degree.
Yes.
But it's when it becomes destructive to others, to other people, and it becomes my image at all costs. That's when we run into that deeply pathological klipa of Amalek.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to pop off now.
Okay.
Go get my kids. So this is an incredible appetizer for everything. That's
yes. Yeah. I wanted to mention just one more thing, one more idea. I think a very, very powerful idea over here about self-doubt. And the idea is that, there's two words for destroying Amalek. One is emche, God is going to do it. And the other one, God is telling us to do it. So what's the idea over here between timche and emche? God is doing it, or we're doing it? So the Alter Rebbe explains that during the times of galos, during the times of exile, while we are, and the way I took it is the time that we're healing, we have to give it up to a higher power. And we have to have, and someone asked me this question, like, what does that mean to destroy Amalek? And it really means that once we think that we've got it, that we're fighting this legitimate like battle, we're already not fully, it's an indication we're not fully healed, because Amalek has got us on the other side, the tail end of now being confident and overly pompous, perhaps, with our virtuous, way of, battling. It's like when we're truly letting go and really able to almost have that clean and pure heart in looking back at that person. And that only takes letting go. And it's almost God is doing the job. Right? Emche. And then once Mashiach comes, the Alter Rebbe says, we do it. Timche, Zecher Amal, because now we're able to we have that, that true strength. Anyways, on that note.
Have now, because as the Rebbe said, Mashiach is here and revealed, and it's on us shifting our consciousness to fully come into that. So we have that power now. Yes,
we have that power. And it's a balance also between knowing it's to get there. We have that power to get there, but the first stage is emche. You're giving up, and it's a very subtle emunah, belief in Hashem, which is the opposite of that self-doubt. Belief in Hashem in the hands of Moshe, right? So, anyways, thank you so much, Ani, for coming on, and for this. I feel like appetizer. I think. Yeah, exactly. Getting into a lot more that I would definitely like to get into as someone who has gone through this. And a lot of people don't know this. Again, people think, oh, you come from this perfect family, you come from this and everything's fine. It's like, no. And only recently I've even come to understand what narcissism fully is. And that's like, a game changer almost of understanding what we could step into in terms of our power. So God bless everyone. We should all step into our power. And macho emche, macho timche. Many blessings. Thank you, Ani.
My pleasure. We'll speak soon.
Bye-bye.